Hello everyone and a very warm welcome. In today's tutorial, we'll introduce a new PDF viewer to Power App. Mainly, we are going to focus on Canvas app in this particular demo. We are going to integrate the PSPDFKit Viewer as a code component in Power Apps. But before I go ahead and start writing some code or develop a custom code component using Power Apps component framework, I want to share a little bit of backstory of how this idea pitched in. So it all started when my dear mate Matthew, who is also a fellow MVP, went ahead and shared a blog. By the way, the blog is awesome and it's a great use case. So go ahead and follow his channel or his blog as well. So when I say that, this blog is pretty straightforward. It's a SharePoint library and he is going ahead and displaying documents from the SharePoint library. Right, so let me take you to the Power Apps. So this is how he went ahead and displayed the document. Now, the next thing is displaying the documents. So to display the documents, the only option here is the PDF Viewer, which comes out of the box. Now, there are a few things out here. This is a very bare bone PDF viewer, right? There's nothing much that we can do. It just displays a particular document. Let me associate a variable out here, and if you see, it's displaying the document and that is what it should do. So if I click on another document, it will display another document in few seconds. Now, this is good. But one of our customers went ahead and requested me, Clavin, can we go ahead and introduce few more features? The features like annotations, can we annotate the documents, can we add signatures to the documents, etc. Now this came up as a challenge to me. I went to the internet and tried to find a PDF viewer. A PDF viewer that is flexible, easy to integrate, and high on features, and there I stumbled upon PSPDFKit Viewer. Now let me show you how the same app will look in PSPDFKit. If you see, I'm displaying the same document out here, but here we have loads of extra features. For example, I can add a signature. Let me type it in. I will just type in Clavin Fernandez. I'll scroll down and I'll click on done, right? This is how easy I can add a signature. Now, after adding the signature, if I want to directly download, I can click on the download icon from the PSPDFKit Viewer, and here, my friends, you can see a signature. We can also save the document to a different data source. In this case, I'm storing it in my OneDrive. And if I go to my OneDrive a few seconds ago, you see there is a document with my signature. So this is what we are going to create. We are going to introduce a new PSPDFKit Viewer or a new PDF viewer to Power Apps. So isn't it exciting? Let's not waste any further time and let's get into the demo. Now we need to understand a few things out here. To create a custom code component, you need some level of developer experience. Okay, I'll say some level of developer experience because you need to understand TypeScript, you need to understand a little bit of HTML, and you also need to understand the PCF framework or the Power Apps component framework. However, if you're very new, I would suggest that you go ahead and follow my blog to the letter. Okay, when I say follow my blog to the letter, copy the things as is and stick to the naming conventions. This will make your life easier, and if you get stuck, you can always ping me and I can help you out. So the blog is already out here. You can just follow it. Now, without wasting further time, let's get started with our PSPDFKit component. So first things first, I will change my directory, create a folder. So to create the folder, I'll just type in a command mkdir PDFKit component. So my folder is created. Next thing, I want to get into the folder. Next thing, we need to create a code component, or we need to initialize a project. So to initialize the project, we need to type in pack pcf init. We need to give our project a namespace, the name to the project, and the template would be field. Okay, so I'll hit enter and this will initialize my project. Now that my project is initialized, let me put in npm install so that it will add all the node modules and the prerequisites required. So now that my node modules have been installed, let me open the project in VS Code. So our project would look something like this, right? We'll have the index, we'll have the control.manifest, and we'll have the npm packages as well. So the node modules, right? But one node module that we need to add is the PSPDFKit node module. So what I'll do, I'll open the terminal again and I'll try to install the PSPDFKit node module. So within a few seconds, the node module is installed, and that is great. Now we have the structure ready of the Power Apps component. The first file that we'll be interested in is the control.manifest.input.xml. This is where we can go ahead and bind how we are going to pass the inputs and how we are going to display the outputs. Next is index.tx. Index.tx has got three main methods that we'll be interested in. It's init, it's update, and it's get output. As the name suggests, initialization will initialize your control. That is when the control kicks off, the remote server calls and other initialization actions take place out here. Next, what happens when something updates? For example, when something updates in the property bag. That's where we are going to go ahead and do something, and that's going to be in the update view. The get output, as the name suggests, it is called by the framework prior to the control receiving new data. And finally, the destroy method is for the cleanup job. So first we need to define few properties, right? It's very important. So I'm going to paste in few properties and we will understand what the property exactly does. So I'm going to copy in the properties. The properties name is the name that will be visible in the property bag or the property pane. So the three properties are: one, we are going to go ahead and pass a document. Second, we need to define a PDF viewer width. Now how do I know that? That's an interesting question that might come up. So let me take you to the PSPDFKit documentation. Here it is. Right, so there are a few deep things that you need to take care of. We need to define a width and a height, right? That's something that they have told, and we need to pass it dynamically in our case. That's why I'm defining width and height in the property bag, right? So the width and height are defined. The document is the actual document, and PDF document is the output. For example, the annotated document that we saved in OneDrive. So that are the four properties that I have defined out here. So now that we have defined the properties, next we need to go to the index.tx file. In the index.tx file, we need to define few variables. So I'm going to type in few variables. So the first variable would be notify output by Power Apps. So long story short, notify output change is a callback method that alerts the framework that the control is ready for is changed and something is ready to be retrieved, right? That's what it does. So rather than me typing it in, I'll just paste it in. So it's pretty simple. We are first going to go ahead and create an instance, which I'm going to show you how we are going to use it. Then we are going to create a div element as well as a private variable. Then the base64 string, you might already be guessing it, it's going to be the output. The context, which will help us retrieve the variables or the properties that we have defined in control.manifest.xml. And next we are going to create a placeholder value to store some value, right? That's pretty much it. Now that we have defined these things, the next thing that I'll do is that I'll define the initialize method. But before initializing the method, I would like to save my work once. So it's saved, and let's try to execute the project. So I'll type in the command, it's npm run build. So once the project is built, I can say npm start, and this will start a project in the test harness. So my test harness has launched, and if you see out here, we have few properties that are coming in, that is width, height, and the sample output property as well. So we can close this, we can stop our test harness, and we can continue our coding. So we are on the right track. So next what we need to do is we need to initialize our control. So first things first, we need to tick off the basics. That is, we need to initialize the notify output changed, and we need to define the context variable in our initialize method, right? So I'll just go ahead and paste in 2 lines of code, and if you see the notify output change, which will help us understand when the output is changed, and the context will help us get the variables from the property back. Now that we have the 2 variables which can help us get the data and notify if the output has changed, the next thing would be to go ahead and initialize a div element such that we can pin a PSPDFKit Viewer in the project. Once that is done, I need to define the width and the height. Now when I say that, I need to go ahead and find in the parameters. Now this is giving me an error, is showing me sample property back. Why is that? So I go back because I should not have anything out here related. So I'll save it again. I'll click on save all. I'll try to build it again. So what I have seen, sometimes if you don't build the project, or if the project, okay, I get an error and I understand why. So I go back and comment out this line of code, click on save, and I'll click npm run build again. And let me get rid of the code that I don't need. So that's one thing that I'll do. I'll remove the code that I don't need, or the comments out here. Finally, it's built, and here we find the variables, or you can say the parameters from the property bag. So I'm going to click on the dot, and I'm going to get the PDF viewer width, height first, dot raw. Then I'll concatenate pixels, so px. Right, so that's one thing. I'll copy this line, and I'll also get the width. So instead of the height, this time I'll get the width, and I'll change the viewer height to viewer width. Now that's done. Next, I want to just check if my div component is being added correctly. So for that, I'll add the background color as green, and next I will add the whole div to the container. So the container is the HTML div element that is there, and we need to append anything that we define in HTML to the container. Okay, so I'll click on save. Now that we have initialized our method, we have got the npm package. There's one thing that we need to do. We need to declare a module. So I'll create a file, new file. I'll give it the name typings.ts, and I'll declare my module out here. So my module has been declared. Now that my module has been declared, the next thing that I need to do I need to load the PSPDFKit Viewer, right? We need to go ahead and define it. So to do that, I'll again go to my index.txt and I'm going to create a new method. The method is going to be an asynchronous method. That means we are going to lazy load the PSPDFKit module. So this is the method that we are going to use, async method, and I've given it a name PSPDFKit. So next, let's get back to the documentation. So to load or to go ahead and use the PSPDFKit module, we need to use the PSPDFKit.load method. So we need to first import the module and then we need to load it. The code is readily available on their site. What I'll do is that I'll just simply paste it in. Now, I say again, don't worry about the code a lot. The reason being, I have provided the code on my blog. So don't too much worry about the code. I'll go ahead and explain you, and it's also available in my blog. So first, what I have done, async, I have loaded the modules, or I have imported the modules out here, right? Then if there is a PSPDFKit viewer already, unload it. Next, I'm loading the PSPDFKit viewer. Now the base URL, you might be thinking, what is this? The base URL is very important because PSPDFKit uses wasm. Wasm is a file, is a WebAssembly file, and we need to fetch it during the runtime, and it has to come from a public repository. And because this is a demo, I'm going ahead and using unpackage. If you know, unpackage is a way to go ahead and get the node modules as a CDN. But if you're using it in production, make sure you define your own CDN and upload the node packages. I'll leave the link in the description section below, which goes ahead and will help you create a CDN or a static website in Azure, and you can serve the files from there. Next, if you see, I'm getting an error out here. That is, how are we going to load the document? Remember that PSPDFKit needs an array buffer. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new method and pass an array buffer out here. Next, I'm getting the whole instance of the PSPDFKit viewer and I'm appending a save button. What happens when I click on the save button? It goes ahead and converts the array buffer into base 64. And finally, it raises its hand and notifies that the output has changed. So there are two things that we need to define. First, we need to define an array buffer. We need to define a method that converts array buffer to base 64. So I'm going to paste in some code out here. It's pretty simple. It's converting array buffer to base 64. And the next thing that I need to do is I need to convert base 64 into array buffer. So it's vice versa, right? So the two methods are defined, and now my project does not have any errors, right? So that is really good. Now that we had defined the methods, we need to write some code in the update view. Now this is very, very, very important. What does the update view does? Whenever something changes, that is when the update view is being fired. So the first thing that I can think that changes is the width and height. So I'm going to define it here, the width and the height. Next, I want to go ahead and load the document. But when I want to load the document, only when a property has been updated in the property bag, not when perhaps the size changes, not at that time. So to do that, I'll go to the control.manifest and I want to change it only when the document property has been updated, right? So I'm going to say if, so I'll go to the update method first. So if the property bag document is updated, then fire this code, Now what code? First things first, get the values and store it in a variable. So that's what our variable value does. Once the value is updated, what to do next? Go ahead and call the PSPDFKit method. Now if you remember, it was an asynchronous method, so this also has to be async. So I'll type in async and I'll say that it's not void. Now if I go up, the same applies to the initialize method as well, right? I want to initialize the PSPDFKit Viewer when the document or when our control is being initialized. So I'm going to again say load it, await, and I'll say this method is async. Right, so the initialize method is asynchronized, the PSPDFKit is asynchronized, and even the update method is asynchronized. Now that we have defined our code, the next thing that we need to do is say, when I click on the button, it should export the output. How will that work out? That's a big question, right? And if I go to my PSPDFKit code, this is where I notify the output when someone clicks on the save button. But however, I need to store the output in a variable. So the variable that I have used or defined is named as result. And I'm going to return the outputs from here. So it's going to be this.base64 and I'm going to return the output. I'll save my project. Now that we have defined a project, it's time to test it. However, you need to understand that the property bags or the updating the property bag does not work in the test harness. So I'm commenting the if part of the code in the update view. I'll save the code again and I'll go ahead and run it, npm run build and npm start. So if everything has worked as expected, this should render the PSPDFKit Viewer in our local test harness. So our test harness has launched. If you see out here, the PSPDFKit is opening and I'm passing in a sample document. And so let me try to add some annotations. So maybe add a signature. Just type in Clavin Fernandez. I'll scroll down and I'll click on done. So the signature is here. And if everything works correctly, if I click on save, here my friends, you have the data output into a PSPDFKit document variable. And if I try to copy this and go to a site, maybe base64 to file, go to base64 guru, paste this in and decode it. You see here, my friends, I have the signature. So I think this is what we wanted to create. Let's not go ahead and pull this particular demo or the video tutorial ahead, and let's break it into a second part. In the next tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can package it and use it in your Power Apps. So stay tuned and see you in the next video. If you like this video, do subscribe to my channel, and if you find it helpful, please click on the like button as well. It keeps me motivated. Thank you and bye-bye.